Welcome to this latest edition of Lexington Remembers. You can see the logo behind us here. I'm very happy that the guest for this program is Satoshi Oishi, who lives here in Lexington and has a fascinating story to tell us. And Satt, when did you come to Lexington?
I came about 10 years ago, and the reason we came is because my daughter lives in the next town. What is it?
Belmont.
Belmont, and we have one grandson, and we used to visit each other about every 3 months, and we had a couple of accidents on the road, so we said we have to get closer together. So we had been looking at places where we could change our living place, and what happened was in the course of probably a year we looked at a dozen places, and it happened that on a Sunday, nice sunny Sunday, the person who owned the condo that we now live in, he was looking for a buyer, and the sun was coming through the windows, and it was lovely. And I said to my family, and he told us how much he was wanted to get for the unit, and I said, and we owned a house in Summit, New Jersey, that we owned for almost 50 years, and it was about the same price that we would sell it for. So I looked at the faces on my family, and I said, let's go for it. I don't think we're going to find anything better. And that's how we got.
That's how you and your late wife found the place that you now live in.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's really close to your daughter and your son-in-law and your grandson.
Yeah, 10 minutes away. We see each other at least a couple of times a week, and so.
That sure beats Summit, New Jersey.
It sure does.
And what were you doing in Summit, New Jersey?
Summit, New Jersey, good question. I graduated from the University of Connecticut in 1949, and I, with two of my roommates, we got an apartment in East Harlem, New York, to look for jobs and so on.
And you graduated in what program?
Engineering.
Engineering.
Yeah,
okay.
Civil engineering, and we were familiar with the head of the engineering school was a person named Castleman, who was well known throughout bridge engineers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we knew that much, and we were also directed to a couple of known people who look for jobs for new graduates.
Oh, okay.
And what was happening, the New Jersey Turnpike was under construction, or it was starting.
Oh, that thing.
They were looking for, good graduates.
I bet.
And so that's how I got in there. And that company that I was hired was headed, it was called Edwards and Kelsey, and Mr. Edwards was a graduate of Harvard.
Oh, okay.
Very kind, very thoughtful person. And between the two of them, they set up some of the way in which we design and manipulate traffic on highways.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
okay.
and
they were traffic engineers.
They were traffic. They started. They were one of them was one of the starters of. Mm-hmm. He's the first one who counted traffic by lanes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he also designed circular intersections, and in the winter he would pile the snow into such shapes and see how they worked.
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yes. Yeah. So they were very, and their chief engineer, he was older than both of them, and he was also a graduate of Harvard, and his name was Hanavan. He lived in Manhattan, and he was also very, very kind, I would say. He wasn't a brilliant engineer, but he was, one of the first steps that they created, because they had a lot of new graduates, was to create a school of associates.
Oh, I've seen. Of new graduates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And among those new graduates, I was one to be given nice projects, and in those days, the reaction of the client was key. If you work well with clients, and mm-hmm. they got good reports back to the firm, that was a reason for promotions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
But you had quite a pathway to that first job.
Yeah.
March of this year had special meaning for you.
Yes.
75 years ago. Tell us what happened to you and your family 75 years ago.
75 years ago, our good President FDR issued a presidential proclamation, 7009 or 099. That's being celebrated in Washington right now. And what it did was it gave the Army total authority to get all the Japanese out of Washington, Oregon, and California.
Just those 3 states?
Just those 3 states. And so the Army, that section was headed by a general named DeWitt. And the fact is, the prejudice against Japanese farmers and whatever was rampant anyway. So they said, yeah, get them out of here. And
now, what was the basis for the prejudice? Why would they?
They looked the same as the enemy.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
We were Japanese.
Was anything to do with the economics? What the Japanese farming or Japanese fishing or anything?
I don't think so, because there were very few fishermen. The others were Portuguese, and it was not an economic thing, but it was, in general, there was a lot of prejudice against Japanese. Mm-hmm. So, you know, both the people and the people in state governments and federal governments said, yes, let's get them out. And part of it goes back, way back to something like 1906. The first Japanese to land in this country in California applied for naturalization. The naturalization law at that time was written, of course, by the small 8 states on the east coast of North America, and the law stated that those who are eligible for naturalization are Europeans and Africans.
But not Asians.
Well, yeah, the Asians they weren't even visible.
Yeah, yeah.
So that rule became a key for many, many laws in the 3 states. Those, you can be licensed to do such and such, let's say, except for those ineligible for citizenship. And that statement was used
to keep Japanese out of certain professions.
Yeah.
So this would have been March of 1942.
Yes, exactly.
The war started December 7th, 1941. So about 3 months later.
Yes.
And how old were you, Satt?
I was 13.
You were 13.
I was 13, and the federal government had passed a law that all aliens 13 and over had to register. So I registered. That was no problem. But then I had to help my father and my mother register. They didn't speak English very well. I became a translator from there on.
Yeah.
All the way. But we also, my father and I said, you know, this is the kind of thing that this country will make good.
Now you had brothers and sisters at the time. There was your mother and father, and you were 13.
Yes.
And did you have brothers?
No, I was the oldest.
You were the oldest.
I was the oldest.
Yeah.
Yes, and we, one of the first steps, well, they put us into camps.
Well, tell me first now, how did you find out about this?
In the paper.
You were living there, and you were living there in Los Angeles,
Yes.
right? You had a house and
Yeah, we rented a house. We rented a half of a house, and we through the papers, the notices.
was in the newspaper.
Newspapers, and they would not only tell the time when you were going to be picked up, but where. And I had a Shell gasoline map, and I used to color the areas that was getting close to us.
Okay. And so the newspaper said that you were supposed to be at a certain place at a certain time.
Yes, with one bag.
One bag.
One bag. That's it.
But what about all the things in your house?
Well, everyone had to do things their own way, but our neighbor, who happened to be Jewish, they said, you could put some of your furniture in our basement, and you could, pay a rent for it, it's a modest amount. Mm-hmm. And the modest amount and what came after the war was a Frigidaire refrigerator.
Oh?
Yeah, we got it shipped back to Connecticut by the time we were...
They'd stored it in their
yeah,
basement. And what was it your father was doing at the time?
Oh, he was, at that time, he was managing a Chinese restaurant that was owned by one of his relatives.
In Los Angeles?
In Los Angeles.
I see.
Japantown.
I see.
And he was an unusual Japanese in that he was 6 feet tall.
Really?
Yeah, he was a handsome man. And he went to school to be a teacher, and he was not only a teacher, but a teacher of aquatics, fishing, and
oh, really?
yeah, but he couldn't practice that, so he
couldn't teach, or he couldn't fish.
No, he couldn't do either, and we were lived with relatives who had a farm in Gardena, and there were several families like that who had got to this country early and bought land and started farms. So we lived with them for a while, and then we moved to Los Angeles.
Now, when did your parents come over from Japan?
Well, my father came, I think, in 1919.
Okay.
And although Orientals were excluded, those who were involved in what they called treaty trades, in other words, business that involved arts and crafts that was traded with Japan and then sold to.
Ah, I see.
And my father, he had to go once a year and pay the owner of such a store so that he would qualify as a treaty trader. And that's how we came. We were son and wife of a treaty trader.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one way, and then they stuck us into the first place they stuck us was in the stables at Santa Anita Racetrack.
When they picked you up, now they picked you up in a bus in a street corner?
Yeah,
somewhere,
exactly.
with a suitcase apiece.
Yeah.
And then how much notice did they give you?
Oh, it couldn't have been. I don't remember, but it couldn't have been more than a couple of weeks.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
so you saw in the paper
Yeah.
that you were going to be removed.
Yes.
And so then they picked you up in the bus, and where did they take you that first day?
The first step was to the Santa Anita Racetrack, big racetrack with places for the horses.
Yeah, stables.
And we were in one of them. They gave us 5 cots, and the upper part was open, so our neighbors, we could hear them talking.
And this, how did the Army treat you when they put you on the bus and then dropped you off at
the Army treated us, okay.
Yeah, they were perfectly. And were the people standing around on the street corner?
Yes.
Watching you get picked up?
I guess so. I don't recall looking at the people, but yes, we were. That was a temporary stopover, the Santa Anita Racetrack.
Yeah.
We were there from March till September or something like that. And then,
that long?
Yeah, in that place.
6 months?
Yeah, but then they took us by train to one of 11 camps. These are the more permanent camps, and a new organization was created, and it was called the War Relocation Authority, and it was all managed by Quakers.
Oh?
Yeah.
They put the Quakers in charge of this agency and in charge of the camps?
Yeah. And the camps were first class in that we had teachers that were first class. We had health workers who were first class. We attended a 60-year anniversary of these camps, and we, for the first time, we had what we call it, conversations with the local people, the local Arkansas, because our camp was the one in Rower, Arkansas, on the Mississippi floodplain, and they envied us because we had first-class schools, first-class teachers, first-class hospital, and they wondered. First, they thought we were soldiers.
Prisoners of war.
Yeah, prisoners of war. And then they saw that we came with children.
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, we had first-class teachers, they were recruited from all over the world. I mean, all over the country, and of course they were paid higher than where they taught in Indiana or some places like that, and it was a first class organization.
Club Med, huh?
Yeah.
So what were the living quarters like? Were they
There, once we got to the camps, we still had only cots.
really?
Yeah, we only had a cot, and we had a wood burning stove,
Yeah.
and my father, the camp was divided into about 48 blocks. Each block contained a mess hall
Oh,
and,
okay.
and bathrooms and so on, and but the rooms were a little bit bigger, and we could not be paid more than we were paying the American soldiers in the Army. So we were getting $12, $14 a month.
Yeah, that's private's pay.
Yeah.
And what did your parents do? Your father was running the restaurant, was working in the restaurant in Los Angeles. What did he do in the camp?
He was the block manager of our block.
So he got paid for that.
Yes, he got paid for that. And I would go out, and we were on the edge of a forest. The government had leased something like 1,000 acres all around, mostly forests. And in order to keep warm, we had to go out and be lumberjacks. And fortunately, there were enough people who knew how to do that. And I used to go out on weekends and get paid $12 a month.
Oh, to pick up wood. Okay. Now, could you leave the camp?
No.
You had to stay within the... Yeah. And how many people were in this camp in Arkansas?
The one in Arkansas, I think I have the data, but I would say 10,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And newspapers, radio,
everything came, and one of the things that happened was the young men volunteered, and they created the 100th. I forgot what they called them, but they were a special group in the Army, and they got more citations than any group in the Army, and that they were sent to Europe.
Oh, they were.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the younger men volunteered to serve.
They did. It was better than rolling around in the camp.
Well, I would think.
But for those of us who were high school and younger, we had a ball where we really didn't have parental control over us. And, I should have brought the annual booklet that we made. It had to be done all by hand.
Yeah.
And, stuff like that. And we set our own hours.
You did, huh?
Yeah.
Well, what did your parents think about that?
They couldn't do much. They couldn't do much.
They couldn't?
No.
Why?
Because there's no control.
Because the camp people were in control.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, they were all our people.
Oh, I see.
Camp people. The camp people were our people.
Yeah.
There was no... They had watchtowers, but they were seldom, seldom manned.
Really?
Yeah. And
did they have barbed wire around?
They had barbed wire, but we could go out into the woods.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you could you weren't supposed to, but you could get off the campground.
Yeah, the campground, yes. Yeah.
And did anybody run away? Anybody escape?
No. Where would they go? No.
They'd get caught awfully fast. Yeah.
Yeah, so this organization then, it's headed by Quakers, but its objective was to get as many people out of camps outside working, as many as possible. And that's how my father and I, people could, employers could come in and sign up workers. And one of the big workers to be, one group to be signed up was by Birdseye.
Oh, really? The food.
Yeah.
I remember them. He started frozen food.
Yes. And
so he had a plant there in Arkansas.
Yeah, and there's still remnants of, the Japanese culture that they left down there in South Jersey.
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So the employers would come into the camp and hire
exactly
people to work in the plants.
Yeah, or whatever. We got hired by a restaurateur.
Okay.
Who owned a restaurant. It's really a diner in Waterbury, Connecticut. That's how.
No, wait a minute. This is after you left the camp.
No, this is now. We were in the first camp, the first whatchamacallit,
in Arkansas, the Arkansas camp.
The Arkansas camp, yeah.
So how did you end up in Waterbury?
Well,
it's a long way from Arkansas.
We were hired by a guy who owned a restaurant in Waterbury, Connecticut.
Well, now I'm confused. Is this after the war was over? Or when the war was still on?
It was, it would have been, I would have been, I don't know, 13, 14, something like that. So.
You said you were 13 when you went into the
camp.
Into
the.
And so somebody from Waterbury, Connecticut, who ran a restaurant, came to the camp.
Yes.
And hired people.
Yes.
And so then you could leave. You left the camp.
Yes, we were given $25 and train fare to Waterbury from Arkansas.
So the only so you could go if you got hired from the camp.
Yes.
You could go any place in the country where you were hired,
Except for the
except for the West Coast.
Yeah. Right. So many settled in Chicago, for example, got jobs in Chicago, and some in Philadelphia, but a few scattered here and there. And we were hired by this owner of really call it a diner, and he was Japanese. And
okay.
he was a Japanese who skipped off of the ship in New York. He came. There were a handful of Japanese in New York City that had businesses who were jumped off the ship. They were illegal immigrants.
I see. So then he set up a restaurant.
Yeah.
And so did you stay in the camp in school, or did you go to Waterbury?
I went to Waterbury.
How long were you in the camp in Arkansas then?
In Arkansas, I was, we were from Santa Anita Racetrack. We were sent to Arkansas, the camp in Arkansas, and we were there. I was there for, 2 years.
Okay, before you went to Waterbury.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So, well, so how did you feel about suddenly being pulled out of your home and your school and everything and stuck in a camp in Arkansas?
Yeah, well, we had no choice.
Yeah.
Absolutely no choice. And in this Japanese-owned restaurant in Waterbury, it was manned. All the workers were Japanese. In the kitchen, my father worked in the kitchen, and we had 8 people working in the diner. And the wife of the owner was the cashier, and she used to brag that we had 3 valedictorians working as waiters in this restaurant.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It was.
And so you had a house in Waterbury.
Well, we rented a house from the cities, one of the city housing.
Oh, I see.
And we had a nice apartment, and once we got that, we got my mother and sisters to come out
from Arkansas.
From Arkansas, so that's how they settled in Waterbury.
So you had how many sisters did you have?
I had at that point I think I had 2 sisters.
Yeah, you and 2 sisters. You were the oldest one.
I was the oldest one.
So were you hired by the diner too?
Yes.
At 13?
Oh,
well, you've been 15 by
15,
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden you're settled in Waterbury. How'd you feel about being out of the camps?
Oh, it felt good. We were paid $100 a month. We were given bedroom, and but we had, and of course my goal was to get into a university.
Yeah.
But I had nobody to talk to who could help me, and that's when the Quakers set up in Philadelphia what they called War Relocation Authority or something like that. And they helped, first they helped the students who had already been in college at University of California or wherever and were pulled out. They helped them find schools. Even at that point, the government would not allow us to go to any school. The government, they wouldn't let us apply. Not that we could afford it, Yale or.
Isn't that? I wonder why. That's strange.
Yeah.
So there you were, and you're ready for college. You're graduated from high school.
Yeah.
You want to go to college, and the Quakers helped find a college for you.
Yeah, University of Connecticut, and I discovered that I had been a resident of Connecticut for over 6 months, which made me a legal resident, so that tuition at the University of Connecticut was something like $125. It must have been a semester.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
$125.
So.
Well, it was $400 a year at Harvard when I went there, so it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, it was.
People can't believe that now.
That's right. And the beauty was when I worked summers at a summer resort, I could make enough to go to school for the coming year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what were your sisters up to at this point?
Well, they were in grammar school.
Okay, in Waterbury.
Waterbury, yeah.
So the camps are behind you now.
Yes, right.
And what about what happened to the people who are left in Arkansas?
Well, they slowly left. They found jobs, and I think, I don't know what else they did, but they didn't stay in camp.
Around the country. So, it's so weird, Satt, because if this group of people, this Japanese people, were going to do sabotage or something, I mean, you were only going to be saboteurs on the West Coast? You weren't going to do anything in Waterbury? I mean, the whole thing is weird.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, that's true. But as I said, the wife of the owner was the cashier, and she used to brag that as waiters there were 3 valedictorians. And she would tell everybody. When I was accepted into University of Connecticut, now we used to get a lot of customers coming in. I asked where Stores was to the customers.
Where's Stores, Connecticut?
Yeah, they didn't know.
They didn't know, and you didn't know.
And I didn't know. So finally, a union leader said, I know what that is. That's the Stores Agricultural College.
Oh, yeah? That's what it used to be called.
Yeah. And it was as they said, an agricultural college. It was what do they call it? funded partly by the U.S. government.
Yeah,
you know?
under the Morrill Act.
Yeah, and what?
And then it emerged into the University of Connecticut.
Yes,
That's happened in
yes.
all the states, I think, the same.
And I got in on February or January entry to replace about 40 students who had either left for one reason or another, and we were accepted into there. No one knew how to travel to U Conn.
Yeah.
I found one person, and he was a Greek native, and I hung on to him, and we took the bus to Willimantic, and then the last 8 miles we hitchhiked.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hitchhiked to school, and at the University of Connecticut, there were already about 8 or 10 Japanese Americans as students there, and they put me in a dormitory with one of them, and from then on, everyone at the university was kind and thoughtful to us. I mean, I couldn't say I have a interview that I gave to the university alumni recently, and and I tell them that they, in general, they were all very kind and thoughtful to us.
Yeah, that's good. And and the war is still, well, the war over by this time? When you went to stores, was the war over?
When I went to stores was I graduated in 49.
You went in 45 then?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was over in August of 45.
Yeah. One of the funny, well, not funny, my uncle, who had been a graduate of Berkeley before the war started, he was one of these happy guys. Hey, I can fix that kind of guy. And he got stuck among the first group of Japanese seniors who were stuck into camps. And these were all people who had served in the Japanese army in some way or another.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I'll get him out." I mean, he was that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Of course, he didn't. But as soon as he got into this camp, this was a special camp, he saw that, as he puts it, he could be of great service by staying there to be a translator.
Yeah.
Because he was fluent in both Japanese and English.
Mm-hmm.
And when the war ended, he was given an opportunity to go to Japan. He was a citizen of Japan. So he went to Japan, and being the outspoken,
extrovert,
he married a lady who owned a hotel in Tokyo, and lo and behold, the election in the United States let Harry Truman beat Dewey, and he volunteered to be the interpreter for Dewey.
Oh, really?
So he
Really?
sent a newspaper with him, she explaining to Dewey what he was seeing. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So, this is really a dark chapter in American history. You can't help wondering whether Franklin Roosevelt ever realized what he'd done and how what an un-American thing it was that he did, and the hardship on all those families. And they lost when they left. They lost everything.
Yes.
Except what was in the suitcase.
Yeah.
And what happened to all their furniture and everything?
Well, we got
yours was okay.
Ours was okay. We got the refrigerator that stayed. That was shipped to us in Connecticut, and it lasted.
But what happened to the Japanese families who didn't have a neighbor that stored their?
They lost it. They just lost it, and the churches took them in, but they couldn't do anything about the furniture. The secondhand, people came down and they picked them all
just
up.
Cleaned out the house.
Yeah.
U Conn, the state of New Jersey, and when did you retire, Satt?
I retired, I don't know, I think about 20 years ago.
Yeah. And you were with the state during your whole career in New Jersey?
Yes. I was.
Well, wait a minute. That was a private company. You were with
it was a private company, and I became its CEO during that time.
Of that company?
Of that company.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was nice because we were appointed as the American engineering group in Iceland.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we were, U.S. was the representative of the NATO countries in Iceland, and one of the functions of Iceland was to serve as the starting point for atomic bombers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a very important place.
Base, air base.
Yeah. So when I went there with a group of about 10 of our people, we were the eastern anchor of the dew line, as you remember. Dew line was stretched from Alaska to Iceland to counteract the expected things from Russia.
Oh, yeah, I remember that well. Yeah, so you worked on that?
Yeah. Well, at the end, and when I was there for any of the activities and decisions, I worked with our ambassador and their at high-level people. And it was one of the things was the wife of our ambassador wanted to change the color of the roofs of all our, asked me to help picked
Really?
the color.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Well, that's talking to the ambassador, and
Yeah.
Iceland is a long way from an internment camp in Arkansas.
Yes.
When this happened 75 years ago, what did your father say?
Oh, you mean he said, this country will make good. It's the kind of country that cannot stay your enemy. It will come back and be your
Support.
Yeah.
They'll make this up to us.
Yes.
Someday.
Yes, that's right. So I would say they did a good job. Yeah, I mean, look where I got to, where I made. One of the things that I give myself credit for, we were an engineering company. We had a profit-sharing fund. And as we retired, you could take the money out of the profit sharing and, and being engineers, they would all put it into bond funds. For some reason, I felt perfectly comfortable putting into what was then called the Magellan Fund.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I have now is mostly due to the Magellan Fund.
Is that right? Is that right? That's great.
Yeah. Even my grandson knows that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says, yeah, he's a good investor.
Yeah. Well, I think for your father to, in the face of this awful act of putting you people on internment, to say they'll make it good someday.
Yeah.
It was pretty remarkable. So thank you so much. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me a chance to tell a story.
It's an important story.